Right, okay, so let's get the session tonight started. Good evening and welcome to everyone. My name is Ismail, and I will be your host this evening. Well, we hope that everyone is keeping safe wherever you are. We have yet an exciting lineup this evening. Before I get to that, let's just firstly remind ourselves why we are running these webinars. I think we're going to have to remind ourselves almost every week so that we just stick to our understanding in terms of why we actually are running these webinars. All right. So obviously the first one is to share knowledge of the beautiful game of volleyball with the aim to grow volleyball across the province. To take volleyball to all corners of the province, including and especially our rural areas. It is quite imperative that we reach as many schools as possible. Without a structured school volleyball program, we are really fooling ourselves if we think volleyball will grow in this province. We must latch onto the volleyball programs run by DCAS, that being the mod programs and the neighborhood programs, and really start working towards getting a sustainable structured schools program in place. So when kids leave school, they can join club structures or work at tertiary institutions and continue their volleyball journey, even nationally and or internationally. It is very simple. If we would like to see volleyball grow in this province, then we need to focus a large percentage of our energies in growing volleyball at schools. So hopefully we can attract more teachers and community people to join these webinars, and also obviously beyond these webinars we make it back to some kind of normality. So before I hand you over to the presenters, just it's a weekly reminder, but it has to be said. Just mute your mics on that side while the presenters are presenting, because any noise that comes from other than well, not noise, but sound that comes from other people besides the presenter does create a problem when it comes to the quality of the sound. Okay. So we're sticking to our theme of the last few weeks. We will basically, this evening, we will present a generic topic as well as a volleyball-specific topic as well. Right. Ismail Teladia will talk to us about life skills in sports, probably in volleyball in there as well, obviously. And then Salie Fakier will share some fundamental aspects of the spike attack in volleyball, which is the fourth basic skill acquisition in our series this evening. So before I hand over to the first presenter, Mr. Ismail, I think it's important also that we do introduce our speakers like we've done in the past. I think it's important for people to know a bit of history of our people that's been around for a long time, obviously serving the sport in various roles and capacities. So Ismail Teladia is the Senior Curriculum Planner, Life Orientation, Life Skills with Western Cape Education Department. Ismail obtained a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Education, a Master's in Education at the University of the Western Cape, as well as a Higher Education Diploma, postgraduate at UNISA. Excuse me. He is currently reading for a PhD in Education. Cricket South Africa Level 3 coach, and International Volleyball Federation Level 1 and SAP coach. Ismail has been a teacher at Spinelone High School for 30 years, recipient of the National Teacher Award DBE in 2013 in the category Excellence in High School Teaching. Taught life orientation and life science. He's passionate about teaching and creating opportunities for his learners and teachers. He's a subject advisor in Metro South Education District, before being appointed to the post of Senior Curriculum Planner Life Orientation in WCVA. Activated the online safety curriculum with Google for introduction into the life orientation curriculum. It's also responsible for managing the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education, short CSE, in the province, as well as physical education, both at provincial and national level. Just switching a bit to volleyball, the roles he has performed in volleyball over many decades now. Ismail has been the former president of SA Schools Volleyball Association for over 2 decades, chairman of the Confederation of School Sports Associations of Southern Africa for 6 years, first SA Schools SASA coach of girls under 19 in 1998, First volleyball South Africa under 20 ladies coach to Africa Championship. Unfortunately, SA suspended on the day the team was supposed to leave. We coached many Western Province teams, including under 19, under 20, senior men's and senior women's teams over the years. Ismail is also the founder of the UWC Volleyball Club in 1980, many years ago. Founder member of the Western Province Amateur Volleyball Union in 1980 and served on the first executive of OVASA in 1981 as media officer. He took the first SA team boys under 19 to Europe in 1996. He led the first SA delegation to an international school sports federation schools volleyball World Cup in Slovakia in 1998. As well, a mouthful there. So I hand you over to Mr. Ismail Teladia, who will present the topic life skills in sport. Thank you, Ismail. All the best. I'll just stop sharing here.
Hi, good evening, colleagues. I think that you can see my screen. Is my screen up?
Yes, it's up, Ismail.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Thank you for that introduction. This is my 40th year in volleyball at various levels. So my gray speaks to the path that I've walked with volleyball from the time that we started the union, and also UWC Volleyball Club should be celebrating their 40th anniversary this year. So it's been a great journey, and tonight's talk speaks to the issue of life skills, specifically in sport, but also very specific to volleyball. And as Bobby alluded to earlier, we've got to look the part as our hair is grey, so we've got to look the part. But as volleyball coaches, it's also important to look the part when you go onto the court. So in that regard, colleagues, I want to speak to the issue of how important our roles are, and I'm going to break it up into two components. Speaking one to the coach as a life skills person who is going to engage with learners and with adults, depend on whether you coach at youth level or whether you coach at senior level. Ultimately, you're dealing with other human beings, and therefore your role is a very significant one. And then I want to look at our role as sports administrators, because as we move beyond the point of being a coach, we also become a sports administrator, or we sometimes walk the path as a parallel activity where we're a coach and we do sports administration. And I think it is important for us to understand those roles. So I'm going to look at firstly our roles as coaches, and then I want to look at our roles as administrators and how our engagement with our players and with other administrators speaks to the issue of life skills. We must remember that everything that we do speaks to life skills. Our conversation that we're having this evening is about life skills. Our engagement offline with whoever we're engaging with is going to speak to the issue of expressing our life skills in action. So let's look at the role of the coach. And the first thing I want to ask all of you as a coach is, you have a critical role to play when you're dealing with young people or with adults in your club situation. And as a coach, you need to be the role model for those individuals. I think your role is almost similar to that of a teacher who is going to impart knowledge, is going to impart skills, be that physical skills, but you're also imparting life skills to the people that you are working with. And therefore your role needs to be one of being an exemplar individual, meaning that you need to provide a pathway that all those people that you are coaching, that they want to follow, and they want to follow that with gusto. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what is your brand? And I use the term brand because people easily understand the issue of branding oneself. I'm wearing Adidas tonight because I love Adidas. Ubi always wears Adidas, but that is because he's sponsored. Unfortunately, I'm not sponsored. So I wear Adidas. I purchase Adidas because I love the brand. So what do I associate with the brand? I associate with that brand quality. And so as a coach, when I talk about quality, what am I making reference to? I'm talking to you about stepping onto the court on time. If, for example, you set out a training session, you set out your training session to start at 3 o'clock, then you need to be there at least half an hour before the time in order to set up your training venue, in order to make sure everything is in place. Because if your training session is to start at 3 o'clock, it means when your players are there, you need to start that program. You need to have a time slot in terms of saying my training session is for 1.5 hours. Do you have a program in place for 1.5 hours? If your training session is for an hour, what is it that you're going to be planning for that hour? Now, your players are watching you all the time. They coming to you, they want to know that if you are focused on the time that you set out for your training session, it means they're going to come prepared. They know that you're going to start at 3 o'clock or you're going to start at 6 o'clock, whichever the time is that you have set for your training session. Now, if you do that consistently, it means you embedding in your athletes the importance of time. And that's a life skill. And that is something that you need to impart to them. If you go to any international volleyball event, the FIVB sticks to their time frames as tightly as possible because there's television involved, there's a number of other facets involved in setting up a tournament. So when they tell you that your match starts at 4 o'clock, you need to be there at 4 o'clock to start your match. And therefore, we need to inculcate in our learners, in our athletes, in our adult team members at our clubs, the issue of being punctual. And the same goes for the rest of the people involved, either in a match or in a training session. So when you start your activity, you know exactly, this is what I need to do in my hour that I have with my team. So I'm going to do A, B, and C with them. We're going to start with a warm-up. But your players don't arrive at 4 o'clock when you're supposed to start at 4 o'clock with your training session, which means they are going to still spend time to undress, to prepare for the training session. Now, it becomes important then for you to set the example. If my training session starts at 6 o'clock, I'm there. We set a webinar time for 7:30. It means that we want to start at 7:30. Yes, we're a little casual this evening or at any other time, but Yusuf was clear. Let's give the persons, and we agreed first that we will give people another minute or two before we start with the program, but he was ready to start at 7:30. So that is part of his brand, is sticking to the punctuality. And that is something that you learn in life and which you need to carry over in everything that you do. So that is a one part of it. Does your brand speak to competence? Are you a competent individual? Do you know what it is that you need to do at a training session? For example, when I initially coached school teams, and then I was elevated to coach a provincial ladies team. So I'd never coached a provincial ladies team before, but I had enough experience coaching at under 90 level, but I then was elevated to the senior ladies. It was a daunting task because you're now having to get out of your comfort zone in order to go into another space. And your competence is going to speak to how you engage with this new group that you're going to be dealing with. So your competence needs to come through. People need to respect you, your team members, your learners, your provincial team, whoever it is that you're going to be coaching, they need to feel confident that you know what it is that you're doing. So it was moving to, I remember working with Shafiq Meyer when we coached a provincial team. Graham was part of that provincial team where we had no superstars in the team. The late Gosh had already moved on. There were a couple of other players that had moved on. And so we were almost a second string team that we had put together for that particular tournament. Yet the work that was put in preparing that team for the nationals had just gone to another level. And it was, I think, the competence of the coaches that brought out the best that we could out of those players. Your reliability in terms of people knowing that they can depend on you as a coach. So all of those things speak to your personal brand. Now, I have at the top, if you see, there's a picture of a coach with slip-slops on, okay? And I specifically I went to look for a photograph of that because I remember as provincial chairperson, when the Western Province teams would take to the court, I would like to see the coaches wearing and looking the part. But when a coach comes to the court in slip-slops, then I don't know, maybe it's my gray hair, booby, but I take a step back, because that to me is not setting a good standard in terms of being the role model. If you're coming as a coach with your backpack slung over your back, with your slip-slop on, and now you're going to be preparing a team for an inter-provincial match, it doesn't, to me, in my eyes, and I may be conservative, but it doesn't set a good standard. And that doesn't speak to my brand. I remember having gone to 1 or 2 training sessions where I, in fact, asked a manager to leave the court to go and put on tackies, because your players are not going to be warming up in slip-slops. They need to be in tackies. They need to be in the proper uniform in order to take to the field, okay, or to the court. A lot speaks to how we are dressed. You must look the part as a coach, and that must be part of your brand. When you're stepping out there, when people see you walking up, they must see that this person is serious about the job that he or she is doing. And that's part of the life skill that we are talking about. So if a coach comes to me in slip-slops with the shorts that's sort of hanging below his waist, then it doesn't give me confidence as an official to say, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. And so all of those things speaks to the brand of showing competence, of showing that you know exactly what it is that you want out of your players. Sometimes the way you are dressed could cover a little gap that you may have in your own repertoire of coaching. So it does become important that we look at that, our personal brand. And our personal brand has a number of other aspects to it, and I'll touch on that as we go along. The second point that I want to talk about as being the role model is for you to show enthusiasm. No matter what kind of day you've had at work, if you come to your training session, you must be enthusiastic about what it is that you want to do, because that immediately spills over to your players. They will immediately pick up the vibes from you in terms of where you are. And so I was saying to teachers and to coaches, you know, the moment you step out of your car and you're going into the space of going to coach, whatever baggage you have, you leave it in your car. You don't take that onto the court with you. If you didn't get everything this morning and you need to be at the match, whatever you did at home, you leave that at home and you focus on the people that you are with for what you have to, your responsibility with them. So it becomes important that you show that enthusiasm, that you show that you are interested in what it is that you are doing, no matter what personal issues you may have, because you're the role model for that group of people that you're working with. And I think that becomes critically important in terms of getting them motivated. Be consistent in your actions, meaning you don't get to one training session and you want to give people drills that are going to make them vomit. I remember that was the past where if the coach didn't like how a team performed, your next training session, you're going to suffer. And we use the term suffer. And, and that is not being consistent in terms of what it is that we want out of our players. So as a coach, you need to be consistent in terms of what it is that you want to achieve. And your competency is going to speak to that consistency that you bring to your repertoire of activities that you do with your team. Make the connection. And when I say make the connection, is making the connection with each of your players. Yes, you're going to have your high performers, but also know that there are other players in your team that may not be as consistent, that may not be as powerful as other players in a team. But remember, on a volleyball court, you need all 6 players. Yes, there may be a weak link on the court, but ultimately, you cannot take the court without 6 players. So it becomes important that you make the connection with all of your players, whether they're the strongest players or whether they're the weakest players in that environment. You need to make the connection with all of them. You need to make them feel that they have a strong contribution to make to the team. As I said, sometimes when you set up your team in terms of service reception, you want to put your weakest player in the corner. The player must understand that he or she is not the best receiver. If they understand that and you've made that connection with them, they will take that responsibility a lot easier than if the players were to just move them without having any consultation. So it's important that you make the connection with your players so that you as a coach, you will be easily able to pick up when your players are not in the best space. You will know my player is not performing tonight because there's an issue. And they will feel free to come and talk to you before and say to you, coach, I think my fingers is a little swollen this evening. I'm not going to be able, can you keep me on the bench rather? I'll come in later. And then you know you're getting the best out of your team. You're getting the best out of each individual player. So when you've made that connection with all of your players, with your manager, with your assistant coach, depending at what level you are coaching, you will then be able to put together a team that is going to perform at their best. Now, that is part of developing the life skills between yourself and the people that you are coaching. So they will know where you are at, they will understand it because they understand body language, they understand your tone of voice, they know exactly what it is that you want from them. I make reference to the issue of staying fresh. And by that, I mean that all of us become scholars of the game. By us attending these webinars, these coaching sessions, it is about staying fresh. And so it becomes all important for all of us to be at the cutting edge of what's happening in our games, in our sport. Let's read up on what's happening. Let's read up on who the top players are. Do we know the top players in the world? Do we know the top female players in the world? Who's the top playing country? Can we make reference to who won the Olympic Games in London or in Brazil? So that is part of staying fresh, because if we know who the champions were, we would probably have watched a game or two, and that would have elevated us in terms of our thinking. What is happening at the international game? Are we staying close to what is happening with the international game? Now, that is the sporting side of things. Being a scholar of the game also speaks to developing the life skills, the psychological aspect of the game, understanding what it is that I need to do with my players. How do I motivate my players? How do I help them over the edge? How do I assist them if my players are unemployed at this point in time? What are the engagements that I need to have with them? So all of those things become important in knowing what the environment is that you're working in and how you move that environment to get the best out of your players. And then lastly, I want to make a reference there to don't be a victim. If my club doesn't have enough balls, does that stop me from implementing drills that is going to involve all of the players? If our club doesn't have a good kit, do we sit back and say, well, okay, let's just see what we can do? You've constantly got to look at being innovative. You've constantly got to look at making the players want to be part of what it is that you are doing. So don't develop a victim attitude, because if you develop a victim attitude, then your body language is going to be negativity, and you're going to carry negativity over to your players, and that speaks to a negative life skill that you're carrying across to them. So it becomes important that you understand exactly your role as being a role model. So when we're talking, where we're at currently, we're talking about developing 21st century skills, and that is a buzzword in education. It's a buzzword in education. It is a buzzword in entrepreneurship. It's a buzzword in business. So we're talking about the 6, it used to be 4 C's. We're now talking about 6 C's. But I want to touch on number 5, which talks to character. Now, as a coach, as an administrator, it becomes important. One, if you're a role model, your character will be carried over to all of your players, and they will have an understanding of what it is that you do and why you do what you do. But you also need to develop character within your players in terms of them understanding what it is that you want from them. What can we do? What can we achieve? I remember when I was player coach at Orion Volleyball Club, we played against the great Hurricanes team that included players like Keith Powell, the late John Davids, Toya Adams, and a number of other players. So that Hurricanes team, on the one side of the court, all provincial players. On the other side of the court, not one provincial player. Okay, we just played the sport because we loved it. But in preparing for that game, we had a discussion. We played it at the Retreat Civic Center as part of the league program. And I said to the guys, listen, we can't out-hit Hurricanes. They've got big blockers. They've got powerful hitters. So what is going to be our strength in this particular match? We can get thumped if we go up against them by trying to out-hit them. So we spoke about having a defensive game. And so it meant we're not going to block at the net. And now I'm talking in the mid-80s. We're not going to block at the net. We're just going to wait for them to hit at us. And that is what we did. We picked up balls. And eventually some of them, the Hurricanes players got frustrated. And that evening we walked away winning that match on a defensive game. No big blocks, no powerful hitters. Yes, we got the occasional point from a spike, but generally it was picking up balls all the time. And it showed character amongst the players in terms of understanding what we were up against and how we were going to adapt our game in order to be competitive. So that is part of the life skills that we need to bring across to our players. It's about developing character. It's about being able to understand the environment that you find yourself in. It's about you, the coach, having character to lift your players in a timeout. And I'm going to make reference to the timeout shortly. What it is that you're going to be doing. We're talking about the issue of collaboration. How do you collaborate? One, with your own club, with the players in your club, but how do you collaborate with other coaches? How do you teach yourself to collaborate with other coaches? And I asked the question to Wasimi in that session that we had with him, because some of our coaches have egos. Okay, I know everything. I stand in front there. I'm the top coach. I know everything. But we don't know everything. That is why we become scholars of the game. So what we need to do is to collaborate with other coaches. What are you doing? And back in the day, we used to what probably called steal with an eye. can see what people are doing in cricket or in rugby with their warm-up sessions. And so we bring that across and we implement that in terms of what we're doing. It becomes important for all players, volleyballers and sports people generally, to be critical thinkers. How do we approach a game? How do we take out one of the top players? If they have a powerful spiker, how do we neutralize that? So you need to have develop critical thinking amongst your players. Communication is something, I mean, we can talk about all night, but communication is critical, not only on the court, but also off the court as well. So colleagues, it becomes important that we understand our role as administrators and coaches in terms of developing these skills, these life skills with the people that we are working with in our club, in our school, and wherever we find them. And we'll touch on some of them as we go along. I want to take the time out for you and talk about the time out as a life skills session. You have 30 seconds in a timeout, okay? And what you do in that timeout. The first 10 seconds, depending obviously on where you are in the game, either you could be on the losing side and therefore you'd call a timeout because you've lost a couple of points in a row, or you just want to give your players a breather. But generally, that first 10 seconds of the timeout, especially in a high intensity game, is to identify the errors. And sometimes as coaches, we use harsh words in that first point of getting them off the court. And I remember one of the life skills that I stand for is that I never use foul language to the players. And I've seen coaches already using foul language, and I had to take coaches one side and just have a chat, say that's unacceptable to be speaking to individuals using foul language. But I remember one final I coached with, and again, I'm saying I never use foul language, but one final we played, Western Province played against Gauteng, girls under 21 finals, and we were in the final set, and we lost a couple of points, and I called the timeout, and I just said to the girls, "What the F are you doing?" And that was the first time that I used that term in the number of weeks that we had been coaching. But it was just one sharp burst. It was a harsh word, and I said, we need to get things together. And that, hopefully, I don't know how the girls read it, but we turned the game around at that point from that time out, and we went on to win the championship. But the point is, your timeout is a life skill session. Your timeout is getting your players and getting at them within 30 seconds, and they have to process such a lot of things in that time. But it speaks to their character in terms of interpreting what you are saying to them in that 30 seconds. The second part of that 30 seconds speaks to, after having identified the errors that the team is making, either they're not positioning themselves right, or they're not blocking correctly, or whatever it is that you as a coach have identified, you need to pick up from that. Your next point is, how do we counter those errors? Okay, so you're working out a strategy in the next 10 seconds. You need to work a strategy with them. This is the plan. This is what we do. But at the same time, you need to calm the emotions, because it could be a hectic match. And therefore, you need to get out your athletes to just cool down for a few seconds in order for them to think. And then the last 10 seconds, you need to build up your players before they go back onto the court. And how do you build up your players? By giving them motivational terms. You know, we can do it. You know, we've worked hard up to this point. You guys can hit the ball. You can serve the ball, whatever the case might be. But that's part of your motivational comments that you need to pass to them before they go onto the court. Because you cannot let them go onto the court with the harsh words. If it was only harsh words during that time out, then you probably would have lost them mentally. So it becomes important what you do during that 30 seconds in order to firstly identify the issues, get him to process that, get him to process the plan that you have in place for them in order for them to correct what they've done wrong, and then finally to make them understand that they can implement the strategy that you guys have just spoken about. Imagine you must do all of that in 30 seconds. Imagine you need for them during that 30 seconds have a life skill session with them for them to understand the emotion and taking that emotion and putting it into a performance. So colleagues, I don't know if you've thought about it, but that is how we talk about life skills and developing life skills in the time that you have available to you. I want to speak to the issue of the role of the administrator and where we are at as administrators, and Yusuf made mention earlier of having to grow the sport. And I think we play a critical role in developing the sport. So what do we do to make an impact? Again, I'm not going to go through the issue of speaking to you in terms of your brand, but as an administrator, you also need to have a brand. How do you look? I've been part of many, very many meetings over years. And I used to always look at going to a multi-coded sports meeting, and all of the other organizations, the people come in with their blazers. But I've never seen a Volleyball South Africa blazer. Anybody coming into a meeting with a Volleyball South Africa blazer. I've never seen a Protea blazer that all of the codes wear with volleyball on. I don't know if you guys have seen, if there is a volleyball blazer like that, but in my 40 years, I've never seen a Volleyball South Africa Protea green blazer with a badge on. And so that in itself speaks to the brand. It speaks to getting a message to whoever I'm engaging with about the importance of the sport that I represent. When we're talking about the administration, I'm talking about setting high standards in administration. Before you send out a letter, and this is no aspersions to Volleyball South Africa, but I've read letters that had a great deal of grammatical errors and spelling errors. And to me, for a national organization that doesn't speak well, you need to have quality assurance with everything that you do as an administrator. So whether it's a letter that you're sending out, whether it's an email that you're sending out, having a conversation on the telephone with somebody is important, because that speaks to the brand and the code of sport that you represent. I feel as administrators, and as part of that life skills, is to create opportunities. Because you must remember the bulk of the athletes that we coach come from disadvantaged communities, the bulk of them. And probably that is why we always battle financially within the code, because we don't have enough rich kids playing the sport. So as sports administrators, in the roles that we have, we need to create opportunities, because it's those opportunities that are going to create the life skills. For example, we took the first team, the Durban, a school from Durban, to the International School Sports Federation. It was a boys team. So after the match, we came out of the wall, and there was the girls team from Finland, and all of the girls took off all their clothing except their bras and their panties. And so they were laying on the grass, and our boys came out, and this is the Durban school from Durban. They came out and they stood in front of this row of girls lying on the grass and sun tanning, because the girls from Finland don't get a lot of sun. So they're very pale. And our boys stood there with open mouths. Why? Because to them it was something totally out of heaven, I'll probably say to them. But the point that I'm making is it's a life skill that we've taught them. They've been exposed, and they would never be exposed to those things unless we create opportunities. I want to also say to our volleyball fraternity that whenever we put anything together, we must remember that we are and we want the participants to have a life-changing experience or an experience that's going to last them for the rest of their lives. Meaning, if you take them to a national tournament, we must ensure that there are no hiccups, that the experience that those kids are going to encounter or your adult teams are going to encounter is one where they're going to enjoy it, they're going to come back, and they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives because they had a good experience. I remember my executive complaining because, and I'm talking the national schools executive, because we wouldn't go to bed unless everything was in place for the following day. So we do all the results, we'd print out the results, we'd have a booklet for everybody so that when we go to the courts in the morning, everything is ready to start on time. And the guys complained about it, but my philosophy was when those kids come there, they must have a great experience. And so as sports administrators, we're teaching life skills. We're teaching life skills by creating a platform for the athletes to be able to perform to the best of their ability, not having to overcome obstacles all the time. We need to remove the obstacles so that they can enjoy what it is that they are doing. And I want to make the analogy with cricket as an example. Back in the day, we used to carry a mat onto the field before we started the cricket match. So we had to carry a mat. So you have 11 players in your team, 5 guys carry the mat before the match, and 5 guys carry the mat after the match. And so that was a chore for us as players. The modern youngster doesn't carry a mat. He gets to the field and he goes onto a turf wicket for that matter. So it's about taking the obstacles out of the way, and we have it in our power at most times to be able to do that, because then the athlete is focused on performing and not about obstacles. Again, it comes down to the victim mindset. We need to get out of the victim mindset and say, what can we do? And I've put up those pictures there, colleagues, for 2 reasons. One, it's showing the court, it's showing the cleanliness, it's showing that is what we want to see whenever we're going to a volleyball venue. The venue must be such that you're coming there and you're going to enjoy your activity. The picture below that speaks to the introduction of creating opportunities for teachers to become referees and scorekeepers. And these persons developed such a close working relationship and such camaraderie that outside of volleyball, they have a gathering annually in every province. So they move from one province to the next, and all of these referees and scorekeepers come together for a weekend, and they just have fun. But they talk volleyball, they have fun, they engage in volleyball activities, in playing a bit, and they talk about things happening in volleyball wherever they find themselves. So that is the role that we can play to create opportunities for others. Then, in terms of being an exemplar of good governance, we must not ever be in a position as an administrator where people question your credentials, where people question you motivating or wanting to do something. We must not be guilty of nepotism, because we see enough of that happening at other levels. We cannot have that within our volleyball fraternity, because we're speaking to the issue of administrators being role models. And that is what we want to show as part of our life skills program to our athletes wherever we find them, but also more importantly to the people that we want to come closer to us in terms of the volleyball programs that we have. So colleagues, understand our positions, understand your position, what it is that you bring to the party, because your physical presence alone is already part of the issue of developing the life skills with whomever you are engaging with. The manner in which you speak, the language that you use, how you greet people, that's part of the life skills. And so when your athletes move away from you, they're walking away with all of those positive values that you have imparted on them, whether it is through that conversation that you have, whether it is in a timeout, whether it's the pre-match talk, or whether it's the post-match talk. What do you do in a post-mortem when your team has lost? Do you go at them? Do you shout at them? Do you scream because they lost the match? What are you going to achieve with that? Are you breaking them down further? Or is it a matter of saying, we've lost it, we're not going to talk about it today, we'll talk about it in our next training session, and walk away from it because everybody's emotions is at another level. So that's part of the life skills that we impart. We may not be aware that what we are doing is about life skills, but everything that we are doing in engaging with individuals within their team environment, within a club environment, is about showing the life skills that you are making reference to. There was one issue that I wanted to include in this as part of my administrative roles. A couple of years ago, there was a club championships in Cape Town, and there was
sorry, Ismail.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just to remind you, you are over your 35 minutes.
Okay.
You can finish off. Yeah.
I'll wrap up now. So in that match, the morning match, a player passed away on court. Okay, so it was a match. Player got a heart attack on court. Player passed away. Okay, the match was stopped. At 1 o'clock, a second match continued in that same venue on the same court, and I was blown away because as an administrator, that wasn't speaking life skills, that wasn't addressing life skills, no matter what Volleyball South Africa wanted out of it, whatever the case might be. But as sports administrators, we should have stopped the program for that day because one of our own had gone on a court. So that is a simple example of providing a negative takeaway from that particular activity. So colleagues, just lastly, I just want to touch on just very quickly, being effective in what we do. An effective coach administrator is always conscious of both the performance and the athlete's well-being. Okay, skills acquisition and athletic excellence are processes, not events. We cannot change a youngster within one training session to be the best setter, whatever the case might be. Allow athletes to be the opportunity to be novices in a developmental environment. And then I want to go to the second last point, being we must become mentors. And so I've showed two pictures there, one with Nizam Kaur and Norman Jordan. Norman Jordan, I taught at Spinrod High School. He went to play for the Bulls, went to play in France, he became a Springbok. Nizam Kaur was at Western Province. He came to me and wanted to talk about moving from Western Province because he was being curtailed in terms of his performance, and he wanted, I didn't have all the answers. I contacted Norman, set up a meeting, and we discussed what he could expect if he were to move to the Bulls or if he were to move overseas. That to me is about mentoring. Our role as sports administrators, our roles as coach, mentoring. Nizam went on to become a Springbok. He's playing in England for a team. I coached the Western Province under 17 team cricket. One of the boys in that team was JP Dumini, and JP and myself still have good conversations, so I assist him with the JP21 program. Again, it's our mentoring role that we have as coaches, administrators. So colleagues, in wrapping up, we affect to eternity. No one knows where our influence stops. Whether we're a coach or whether we're an administrator, we affect people's lives into eternity. On that note, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you this evening.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Ismail. Sorry for putting you on the spot there.
No issue.
You know, there is another presenter. It's obviously it is a very interesting topic and a very important topic for that matter as well. And I think perhaps we should have, you know, in hindsight, we should have had a little more time for this, and perhaps should have had like just a session for this. But I mean, it's difficult to obviously do justice in a 35-minute slot.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of the case for most of the topics. Thank you very much. I've got some, you know, comments of myself, but I'm going to reserve that till the end as well. And I'm sure that others also got some comments or questions for you later on, so we can reserve that till Salie's finished with his topic. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm going to just quickly introduce Salie as well. For those of you that doesn't know Salie's history, he's got quite a rich history in volleyball. Okay, so yeah, so Salie's been involved in volleyball since 1989, okay, and it was an instant love affair for him. He has made a promise to dedicate himself to the growth and the improvement of volleyball in the Western Cape. The upliftment of the kids in becoming better players is key, and also for them to become role models within their communities. He matriculated in 1988 at Kensington High, where he was in the same class as Ricky Stevens. Since standard 8. He attended the Zonnebloem Teachers College in 1989. He was introduced to volleyball by the captain of the college team, namely David Letek. I think David is the uncle of the late Gosh. And he was also a member of Saints back in the day. So he loved the game and wanted to know more. So a volleyball weekend was organized where they slept, played, ate, and drank volleyball for an entire weekend. This is where Salie met Luke Bosch, the late Russell Hendricks, and Kent Africa. Salie was so inspired by these young trendsetters. They were his first teachers of the game of volleyball. He joined D6 volleyball club for a year, but then decided to start a new club in the community. So they started the Vikings Volleyball Club. I think he was also part of that volleyball club in the early days. After a few good years, the players decided to move to another club, and so the club was closed. Salie joined the Telkom Volleyball Club for a year, and then joined Saints Volleyball Club in 1994-1995, where he would find his home. He immediately made an impact and became very good friends with Mr. Eric Gabriels, who would later become his mentor. Over the years, he went from assistant treasurer to secretary, to chairman of the club, and in 2006 he started a new generation of Saints called the All-Star Saints, and today he's still a member of All-Star Saints. And in 2006 he started a new generation of, sorry, that was already said. Salie has been serving Western Province Volleyball in an official capacity for plus minus 20 years, and he served under 5 different presidents during that period, and he's still serving today as vice president. He has been involved in volleyball for a whopping 32 years, either as a player and administrator or a coach. I think Salie and like a lot of other people probably need a standing ovation for their service to the sport over the decades. I hand you over to Salie Fakier, who will present the topic basic skill acquisition, the spike attack. Thank you, Salie. All the best. Salie, you good to go? You can unmute yourself.
Just have to check quickly. Yusuf, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I can see your screen as well. Yeah, you got your folder open there.
So we good to go, Yusuf?
Yes, we need to go. Yeah.
Okay. Shukran, Yusuf, for the introduction. Salam, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Warm welcome to our 8th webinar. Tonight, we have reached our 4th topic of our basic skills, which is called the spike, like we know it. In volleyball, spiking is the act of scoring a point by slamming the ball over the net into the opposing court effectively and aggressively. And in many ways,
sorry, Salie, can I just interrupt you? Did you mean to start your presentation already? Because we can't see it.
Is it?
Okay, so just share your screen first.
And now, can you see it now, Yusuf?
Not yet.
You must open this.
It's there at the bottom on your taskbar. The one on the right hand side, PowerPoint.
Okay, wait, let me just.
You got it there? Okay.
Can you see it now?
No, you must share your screen first. We got it. So share your screen.
Now, Yusuf?
Yeah, there we go. No, you're sharing the wrong screen. Just stop sharing.
Okay.
We'll share screen 2, Salie. Is that right? We'll get it right.
Okay.
Just stop sharing quickly. Just share again and then share screen 2.
And now?
Okay, not yet. All right. Let me just see something here. Did you change much to your presentation when we last spoke?
Okay, let me try this.
Because I can run it from here.
Okay, yes, I made changes. Okay, let me do this, Yusuf. And now?
No, we're seeing your folder at the moment. Okay. Okay, so what we can do is let me run it from my side. If you okay, Salie, let me run it from my side, and I'll share my screen. You can stop sharing on that side, and I will run it. You can just talk through it, and I will show it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. No worries.
Oh, come on, God.
Right, so people just take it quickly. All right. All right. So I'm sharing a presentation from the side here. So you can just let me know when I should go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
No problem.
So we are still on the first slide, eh?
Yes.
Okay. So like I said, in volleyball, spiking is the act of scoring a point by slamming the ball over the net into the opposing court effectively and aggressively. In many ways, the mechanism of volleyball spiking is not altogether different from the act of slam dunking into the sport of basketball or smashing in, in the sport of tennis. Ultimately, whether you are spiking, slam dunking, or smashing, you want to win the point. Okay, Yusuf, you can go to the next one. Can I go, Yusuf?
Yes, you can go, yeah.
So, okay.
Can you,
So there are three types of spiking, and these types are all done in the front court by the net. So you have the drive spike, you have the frontal attack spike, and you have your tip and your thumb spike. Now the drive spike, this is a form of spiking where the ball is hit over the opponent's block to the back of the court, and it normally lands within the last 3 meters of the court. The frontal attack spike is spiking from anywhere in the front to anywhere on the opposite side of the court. And the tip and thumb spike is a type of spike shot where the ball is played with one hand over the block into gaps while jumping. Tonight, we are only going to concentrate on the frontal attack spike. And the reason why is we've chosen the frontal attack spike is because it's classified as being our basic spike. And it's also used especially when it comes to beginners. Okay, Yusuf?
yeah.
Now the action sequence that is before spiking the ball is known as a three-step approach. Now, in the case of a spike, after the setter set the ball, the player moves with one stride from a medium-high ready position behind the attack line towards the forward zone. So in order to transfer the approach of the speed into the height, the player takes a further long stride to the takeoff of the jump. In doing so, the heels land first and the arms drawn back, parallel and upward, and the body weight is transferred and placed backwards. So the last step, you leave the ground jumping up or both feet. So let's just go through the three-step approach again. So your step one is one step, okay, and that's from a medium-high ready position. And if you look at on the diagram on your right-hand side, you will see. And then obviously your step two is a longer step, okay, and that's to the takeoff of the jump. And then your step three is a shorter step, and that's your last step, and that is when you leave the ground to jump off with both feet. Okay, Yusuf, you can go to the next one. In the previous slide, I showed you.
Sorry, Salie, to interrupt you. Can you just tell me the heading of the slide? Because I think I'm ahead of you. What's the heading of your current slide?
The three-step approach, action sequence, three-step approach. It's a fourth slide.
Okay.
You got it?
Yes.
Okay. In the previous slide, I showed you a diagram like of the three-step approach, but now you can see the movement. Okay, you can see the strides, you can see the arm swing, and you can also see the jump. So to start, the body center of the gravity is lowered to achieve the necessary strength for the jump. Okay, so you start off with both feet will start together and perpendicular to the net while waiting for the set. Okay, so for right-handers, you will see that I've also in like for right-handers with a 3-step approach. If you're right-hander, a right-handed hitter, you will start off left and then a right and then left, and obviously if you a left-hand spiker, you will start with the right foot, left foot, and then a right foot. So we're gonna start. If you look at if you see the pic that I have on here, you will see that obviously you can see that this person is a right-handed spiker because she's moving her first leg is moving the left. Okay, so for right-handed spikers with a 3-step approach, your step 1 with the left foot. Okay, and that is to keep the arms in, and the arms is kept in front of you. Now if you see step 2, it's with the right foot. Okay, while at the same time both arms thrusted way back. Okay, with loose shoulders. All right, and before step 3 with the left foot again, both arms get thrusted forward fast as the body gets launched vertically into the air. Now you will see as then obviously if the body's in the air, then pull the elbow back. Okay, you will see the elbow is bent, but keeping it high above the level of the ear, and then with a high reach. Okay, you must also be aware that the hand must be on the ball so that the ball can go exactly where you want it to go. Okay. Let me just... So now, just to simplify, okay, just to simplify this for you, spiking is often compared to what an airplane does on a runway as it gathers speed before it lifts off in the air. The spike approach is a series of 3 steps a player uses before elevating themselves into the air so they can hit, contact the ball above the top of the net into the opposing team's court in an effort to score the point. Yusuf, you can go to the next slide.
Next one, okay.
Okay, now remember now, after you've done the 3 steps, okay, and you jump, all right, you're in the air now, okay? So now I'm gonna speak to you with a contact. When you contact the ball and you're in the air. So while the hitting arm is bent behind the head, the other arm is held at shoulder height for balancing. The trunk is slightly arched, and the shoulder of the hitting arm is pushed forward directly prior to the ball contact. The elbow of the hitting arm is directed to the ball. The ball contact is very important, okay? The ball should be contacted reaching up high with the arm straight. Now the arm, you will see, the arm must be straight, okay? And the elbow extended, okay? The contact should be made reaching directly above or slightly in front of the body. You cannot make the contact where the ball is not slightly above the body. Your hand cannot be bent, and the ball cannot also be behind you. The ball is contacted by the hand using the wrist snapping type motion to direct the ball. So you will use your wrist in a type of motion to direct the ball downward into the opponent's court. Okay. The final movement is an impetus. It's a force that encourages the action. Through active bending of the wrist, the ball receives its final impetus, meaning you will score the point if you have good contact and you're hitting the ball exactly where you want the ball to go. Okay, Yusuf, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
So with the spike also comes body and ball relationship, timing, and landing. So the body ball relationship the player must be under the ball when attacking the ball. Now, you cannot have, obviously, you cannot have a ball that's above you, straight above you, but you standing on the left-hand side of the ball, the right-hand side. You're not going to be able to make contact with the ball. The timing, okay, the timing, the execute of the spike at the top of the jump, okay? Very important. Knowing exactly when to hit the ball can really impact the power of your spike. You want the time, you want to time your approach so that you are able to make contact with the ball right as it reaches your sweet spot, the place where your hand can strike it downward while you're still at the height of the jump. Now, timing is one of the most skills to master, but it's only with plenty of practice you will be able to maximize your strike. So what I'm saying here is that, especially with the timing, if your timing, a lot of us, I mean, we've been playing volleyball, we know, if your timing is out, you won't be able to hit the ball as hard, or you won't be able to hit the ball where you actually want to hit the ball too. So the timing, your timing must be spot on. And the setter, and that is where you and your setter will have a relationship. You must, obviously, you speak to the setter speaks to you. The setter knows exactly which ball you like. You like a high ball, you like a flat ball on the outside. So they will know, but you need to work on your timing. If your timing is out, then you won't be able to hit the ball as hard. And the landing is on both feet and close to the takeoff area. Okay, Yusuf, you can, the next.
Okay.
Now the objective of the spike. A volleyball spike is an adequate technique used to send the ball accurately from a favorable spike situation over the net to the opponent in such a manner that the ball is not returnable. Okay, Yusuf, to the next one.
Okay.
Now, the exemplary game form, okay? Now, this is a drill that you can use as coaches in practicing your spike, okay? The game form is 3-on-3, okay? Meaning you have 3 guys on the one side of the court and 3 guys on the other side of the court, okay? You have a server, you have a receiver, you have a setter and a spiker, okay? So this drill works like this. The server will serve the ball over the net to a receiver. The receiver will then set the ball to the setter. The setter will then set the ball to the spiker. Now, obviously the spiker has 2 options. You can either hit the ball down the line, or you can hit the ball cross court. So this drill can be repeated 6 times, okay? Before you change to the next spiker. This drill used to get players. The reason why you're using this drill also is to get players used to the spiking action. That's one thing. But also to get the spiker used to spiking in different directions. Because sometimes you get spikers, they only spike cross court. Okay? So if you take out the cross court angle, it's very difficult for that spiker to change. But with a drill like this, you at least get the spiker to, he needs to change his angle and not just spike in one cross court. He can spike down the line as well. Now the progression of this drill is that we add maybe another attacker on position number 2, or you can have another backward player with the libero as a receiver. Okay, Yusuf, to the next slide.
Okay, it's there.
Okay, now the learning checklist. And this learning checklist is just on spiking. So as a coach, you need to check whether a player or players, each player can hit a thrown or set ball from a position number 4, or you can have on the position number 2 for left hander or utility to a target on the opposing court at least 3 or 4 times out of 10 attempts. So what do we say here? You can have on the one side of the court, you will have an attacker. You can have his partner or a setter. You can just, the partner can just toss the ball to the spiker. The spiker will then hit the ball in target areas on the opposite court, like target area C. You tell him just to hit the ball there. Then once he has mastered that, you can ask the spiker, okay, hit target area B. You can master that. Once he masters that, hit target area A. Okay, so at least he needs to say 3, 4 out of the 10 attempts. We need to hit these targets. Okay, Yusuf, you can go to the next one. Okay, so now we've not done the 3-step and we've done everything with the spiking. Now we're gonna look at the errors and corrections. Okay, so the errors in the approach and the takeoff. So the ready position is too high, or to straddle position instead of medium high and ready position and step position. The starting position is too close or too far away from the net. Okay, meaning if it's far from the net, you've got too many strides to get to the ball. By the time you get to the ball is already dropping. Or when you're too close to the net, too little strides and no forward momentum. And the last step is too short compared to the other step. Okay, so this is the approach and the takeoff. So how do you rectify this? Now this is just suggestions. So suggestion number 1, Yusuf, you can move to the next slide, eh?
Okay. Yes.
So the suggested solutions for the approach and the takeoff: exercises in which there are floor markings for the approach, the step sequence, and the takeoff places. First do it without the ball. Then later with a stationary ball. For example, you can have a ball holder, or you can have a player on a box holding a ball. Then you can get somebody tossing the ball precisely, and then finally you can get somebody to set the ball. So what is this? What this suggested mean is that you get the player to do the approach, the step sequence, and a takeoff without the ball. You must just do that so that you can perfect that. Then you can add stuff like a stationary ball. So when it does that, with swing as without a ball, then you add a ball. Okay, then you can have somebody holding the ball. Okay, and then you can get a tosser, and then from there you progress by bringing in the setter. And the suggestion number 2 is many drills is in game forms. So games with each other, so that the focus on the progression from defense to attack, and thus leaving the net at the right moment and taking the position for the approach. Okay, now this meaning that you do the approach, and you do the step sequence and a takeoff and the land, and then you move back and then you do it all again. Okay, so you do the movement, and then you pedal back, and then you move, and then you do the movement again, as if it's a defense and attack. Yusuf, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, now the next one is errors in the arm movement. So the arms are not drawn up and behind enough at the last step. Only the hitting arm is drawn high instead of both arms, or the arm circle instead of the, you have an arm circle instead of an arm swing, or the arm swing with bent instead of extended arm. So here also, you especially with the arm circle instead of an arm swing, sometimes you do it in a circle, like when you make contact with the ball, but you're not really swinging the arm. And the arm swing with bent arm instead of extended arm. That arm must be extended. You cannot, there's no power if your arm is bent. So, okay. So the suggested solution into rectifying that is the suggestion number 1 is exercise where the jumping player hits the left hand away. Raise at the same time as the right hand, but not hitting the ball. This is just where you jump up, okay, swinging the arms, but the left hand, when you're in the air, the left hand touches the right hand touches the left hand, but there's no hitting of the ball. So suggestion number 2 is exercises where the player has to catch the ball with both hands while jumping. So he does the whole movement, and you have a tosser tossing the ball to him, and then he catches the ball in mid-air, all right? And then suggestion number 3 is exercise with a shorter approach, with the last step only, in which taking arm swing into consideration, standing, thrown, or as a set, or set balls are played and then hit. So meaning the player will come closer to them, only for, you will only do the last step, okay? So he can do the last step and then jump up and then swing, okay? Now he can swing standing, and then you can throw the ball to him. Somebody can toss the ball to him, and then he can swing his arm, and then afterwards you get a setter to set the ball for him, and then he can hit the ball. Okay, Yusuf, the next one.
Okay.
Now the errors in timing. The errors in timing as a result of incorrect judgment of the ball trajectory, or not being in the ready position prior to the approach, or inadequate takeoff, or incorrect hitting technique. So this is obviously when you're not in a ready position prior to the approach, okay? So your timing is gonna be out. Or you have an inadequate takeoff, okay? The takeoff is not good, and in many times it happens, our takeoff is not good, and then we dump the ball, okay? So how do we, Yusuf, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
So how do we suggestions how to rectify this? And the suggestion number 1, you exercise where at the highest point of the jumps, balls are first caught and later played or hit. So what you do is you first throw the ball, the player throws the ball to himself, and then he hits it, and then his partner can toss the ball, and then he hits it, and then you get a setter to set the ball, and then he hits it. Okay, so this is just to get your timing in. First you throw it, and then you progress. You get your partner to throw it, and then you progress, and then you get the setter to throw it. Now suggestion number 2 is drills in which a ball indirectly reaches the player. Example, prior to a jump ball or thrown ball to a wall or bounce on the floor. This is just mainly sometimes when you hit the ball against a floor, and you get a digger and you set the ball, and then they set the ball to a spiker, okay, from any direction, okay, but it comes to a play, and obviously your timing must be in so that you can hit the ball over the net. Okay, Yusuf, you can go to the next slide. Now the errors in body-ball relationship and in impotence. At the moment of the ball contact, the player is in front of or to the side of or too far behind the ball instead of being under the ball. Now remember what I said earlier on. Like if you wanna, if the body ball relationship, in order for you to, your hand must be in front of the ball. Okay, you can't have you can't, and your hand must be in front of the ball, and you must be under the ball. You can't be on the side or too far behind. Or there's no insufficient stress, bending and drawing back of the hitting arm during the movement before hitting, or no bending of the wrist. Okay, so how are you going to fix that? Exercise. My suggestion number one is exercise where the ball is thrown by the player himself first from a standing position, and then later while jumping from a standing position is hit too close to the net, later to target far away. So the suggestion there is to the ball will be thrown by the player from a standing position. Okay, and then you can toss the ball you can toss the ball while jumping from a standing position. Okay, and you can hit the ball and throw the ball close to the net, and you can hit the ball, and then later you can put targets far away on the opposite side of the court where you can hit to those targets. And suggestion number two, it's the same exercise, but this time the balls are held, sometimes thrown, and later set by the partner. Okay. And suggestion number three is again your game forms. Okay, in which the emphasis is placed on progression from defense to attack. So three ball contact allow, whereby the third ball must be an attack. So you do a defense and attack, meaning you attack the ball, you come back. Okay, you attack the ball, you come back, or you can have whereby you do a defense and attack where you have three. You can three ball contacts are allowed. So, but the third ball must be a spec. So, meaning you have a receive, somebody will dig the ball, set the ball. So the third ball must be a spike. Okay, Yusuf.
Yes.
You can go to the next slide.
I don't have your video, Salie, so I don't think you can show the videos at this point. So perhaps you want to skip that. Unless you want to show it from your side.
Yeah, let me just check. No, it doesn't want to. It doesn't allow me also now to open it. Okay, let me just, that's fine. My conclusion, let's treat the skill acquisition correct the first time. And don't be in a hurry to move to the next step until the previous step is not mastered. The success of each step is based upon the control and coordination of the previous step. If we have a common approach as a province, then we will have the same style to conquer. So as a coach, be hungry for knowledge. Thank you and shukran. Sorry, guys, if there was any inconvenience. It's my first time, and I was very nervous. So hopefully next time it will go much better. Shukran, salam.
Okay, no, Salie, that was a great comeback there. Very well done. I think I've learned a few things this evening as well. Let me just put my face on here just a second. Yeah, no, good. I mean, yeah, that was a very good comeback there, Salie. Well done. Yeah, you know, the spike, obviously, it's as coaches that a lot of us have been coaching for years, and the spike attack is probably the most important skill, when it comes to teaching kids. Why? Because just the fact you're spiking the ball as hard as you can is probably the best skill. That's why these recommendations are made when you're teaching young kids actually lower the net as low as possible, just for them to get deep or over the net, just to get that sensation of spiking the ball into the ground. And that's actually what can affect the kids to the sport and keep them there as well for a while. So well done, Salie. It was a really good presentation on the spike attack. With these virtual, the online meetings like this, it's not always easy to present practical skills, something that needs to be taught in a practical sense. You know what I mean? And so I think the presenters are trying to bring across the teachings that we need to inculcate, in ourselves as coaches, and then also obviously transfer the knowledge to our kids. So well done, Salie. I'm gonna open up the floor now for questions and comments from the audience to the two presenters this evening, Mr. Ismail, Teladia, and Salie Fakier. Yeah, so if you have any questions, comments, I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment. Anyone?
Yusuf, can I say something?
Yeah, sure, Coach.
While the other coaches are thinking, I just want to congratulate Ismail on his excellent presentation and the manner in which he also conducted. And it's great lessons for us, and a lot of times a person don't always learn new things, but you learn things you've forgotten, and sometimes you didn't deem it necessary. So it's a great refresher, like he said in his presentation. We as coaches need to go and do refreshers regularly. In actual fact, in other countries, if you don't do a refresher, you actually lose your license. So you are compelled to do refreshers every year. If you don't, then you lose your license for a period. So thank you very much. And also, Salie, it's difficult to explain a technique and so on, especially with volleyball verbally. But I mean, he did a great job. You can hear that he battled from time to time, but he did a great job. And I would like to also encourage him, and congratulate him for what he has done. So hopefully now by the time the coaches have thought of something.
Yeah, no, well done. When Ismail was presenting his topics, obviously it's a very, very important topic, and it's something that kind of obviously permeates throughout the volleyball. Whatever part of volleyball role you play, like with this coaching, administration, or player, it's all lessons that we can take on board. And the one phrase that came to mind was a phrase by John Wooden, where he said that when the opportunity presents itself, it's too late to prepare. What it basically means is, on a day-to-day basis, we need to prepare ourselves for when that opportunity arrives. So we mustn't, get ourselves finding wanted. For example, you are presented with opportunities to either present your province or present your country. So on a day-to-day basis, we need to prepare ourselves for that. Whether it being like preparing to do presentations like this, people are nervous. We all are nervous when we have to present in front of people that we've known for years. What we're still nervous about, but we need to get through that. We need to get over our fears. And talking about fear, I think one of the things when Ismail showed that youngster with the slip-slops there, I think it speaks about the fear to be different and the fear to stand out. We all fear that. So don't be shy. Let's get out of our skins and become the ultimate professionals that we need to be. Yeah. And just maybe one more comment while the other coaches are thinking still as well. I think just in terms of time, I think the time the one that you opened up with was quite an important one as well. It's something that's been prevalent in volleyball in this part of the country for a long time, probably the rest of the country as well for a long, long time. And I think it's something we need to really work on as a province to start to really get the time thing right, because that kind of sets the tone for all other things that comes after that. And it's not just the it's not, I must throw this one in there as well. It's not just the starting time, it's also the end time. I learned this hard way. A few years ago, I was coaching at WCVA Sports School, and Luther was observing me. He always observes me, and he's my ultimate, he gives me the ultimate critique when I coach. So when I was enjoying the training so much, but actually went over time. But then he reminded me and said, listen, that's your end time is 10 o'clock, you need to stop. You can't go over that. So it's not just, it's all the time that comes into play when you actually, when you play a role in sport. But thank you very much, Ismail. It's a very informative topic. And also Salie as well, very well done for bringing across very important technical aspects as far as the most important skill in volleyball is concerned. All right. So, anyone? Will I shy tonight or call tonight? Can move the slips. Okay, there's no questions. It must have been obviously a very good presentations from both the gentlemen this evening, that there are no questions tonight. Yeah, so we've also gone over time as well, obviously. Hopefully we can get this right going forward. So let me just, if there's no questions or comments, let me just then wrap up as well. So I just want to thank again, I think I'm going to turn it around this evening. I always thank the coaches that attend the audience at the end. We thank all the people, all the coaches, especially administrators that join us this evening for your continued support, to grow the sport, and your contribution in terms of, well, engaging as far as all the topics are concerned. So thanks again for everyone that always tune in on a Wednesday evening. Then I want to thank again DCAS as well for making these webinars possible, in particular Mr. Paul Hendricks and Mr. Paul Meyer at the DCAS department. Then of course, the last but not least, I want to thank our two presenters this evening, Mr. Teladia and Salie, for obviously putting in the time to prepare for these sessions. It doesn't just happen. There's preparation that goes into this. So thank you very much for your time that you've offered up to present these topics this evening. And then, okay, so next week we have two more topics as well, and we see the return of Coach Bubi. He's gladly accepted the offer to do another presentation for us next week. So Coach Bubi will talk to us about coaches evaluation and analysis. Thank you, Coach Bubi. And then also we have Khadija Jafi as well presenting. Took a bit of convincing to get Khadija to talk to us as well about her experiences as a coach over many decades and as a player as well. She will talk to us about competition analysis and match preparation. Okay, so she continue for that as well. And yeah, so that's it from my side. Again, just remember to take extra care during this period of, where we have CS Spark. Some people say they feel this happening now, but I don't think so. You can hear the rain pouring down outside, so it means about an increase in the virus spread. So yeah, just take care out there until we see each other next time. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks for joining again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goeienaand. Salam.
Bye.
Have a lovely evening, gents.
Thank you, Sammy. You too.
Thank you, sir.